Yes, drinking alone here and flying for flavor. Welcome. I am your host, Stephanie Pichet. I'm all alone today only because I wanted to get a lot of things done this week. So I went out of my way to make sure that I wanted to get all the topics in for this particular episode because there's some demo stuff that had to get done in advance, especially for the video side, so that you can kind of be able to walk through how to book an Airbnb with this. So Stacy, of course, our multi-hyphenate, has a ton of things going on this week. So I'm hoping to squeeze in an interview with her. Deke is down in Toronto at a food packaging type event for his Zare's small batch hummus. So of course, his business always has to come first. And Cynthia, as you may know if you're following social media, is in Australia. So she's posting little things here and there, collecting a lot of videos, interviews, all kinds of fun stuff. So you'll be getting probably at least an episode, if definitely crew take, which will be the audio portion of this podcast, which will show up in the next week or two. But she's also planning to put together enough that we can probably have a whole episode about her trip down under. She used to live there for a little while, so she's going to have a little bit different perspective as someone who's actually lived there and now is coming back as a tourist. So that should be a lot of fun for her, but also kind of interesting to see how things have changed since the last time she was there. So I want to talk a little bit about Airbnb, but before I do that, yes, I'm day drinking alone. It is afternoon here. It's not that bad. But just because it is the fall, please do not shy away from rosés. Again, if you've paid attention to any of my other social media rants, or you've seen or heard on previous podcast episodes, I'm always singing the praise of rosé. Partly because I think it is sometimes underrated. If you are not a big rosé fan, you may think that it is too sweet. So far from it. Yes, there are some sweeter rosé wines that are out there, but those are made for that sweeter palate, kind of older style. Back in the 70s, they used to do it that way, making it a little bit on the sweeter side. Now it is much more interesting to have a very good dry rosé. So a couple of things I wanted to talk about rosés today. So this one from Mélanie is one of my easy drinking afternoon ones. It is very dry. So Mélanie Wines is from here in the Niagara region. You can't get it at the LCBO, but you can order it directly from their website. It is made with 100% Cab Franc grapes. So I happen to be a big fan of the Cabernet Franc varietal. And you still get some fruitiness in it, but it is very dry, very smooth, and again, easy drinking. And look at that pretty color for those who are watching on the video. That is a very almost Provençal style color, which is perfect. And I also happen to enjoy this. This is like my afternoon wine. If you haven't heard my theory before, I don't know if this is just the way the Europeans do it or if it's something that I kind of works for me. But I tend to, drink with the sun. So earlier in the day, that's okay to have lighter and sparkling type wines. I am okay with going into a lighter white for lunchtime, possibly a light rosé. Then I can get into darker rosé. The darker the wine, darker the day. So as the evening progresses, then I get into my reds, etc. So that's just kind of my formula, the way that I've worked it, especially when I'm traveling and going to or wine shows or visiting wineries. I like to kind of tailor my tastings that way when you're consuming that much alcohol on an ongoing basis. I just personally can't consume big heavy reds first thing in the day. That'll not only kill my palate, overshadow everything else, but I don't get that chance to really appreciate it the way that I would normally, because I don't usually drink anything that heavy earlier in the day anyhow. Not against day drinking. Been to many wineries who always introduce a certain wine to me as their breakfast wine, to each his own. Anyhow, so Mélanie not only makes a fantastic rosé, but it is on sale right now for $13.95 Canadian a bottle. So if you go to the show notes and you click on the link, if you're listening to this, you should have the link right in your podcast notes. And otherwise, you can always go to stephaniepichet.ca/flavor2-7. So that's referring to the season number and the episode number. So it's always flavor and then 2-7, which happens to be this episode number. So take a look at that. You can order as many as you want. If you're from Ontario, they'll ship directly to your door. I would buy a few of them if they're on sale. They always have a lot of great package deals with 3 bottles for. If you happen to be down in the Niagara region, make sure you stop in and say hello and tell them that that we sent you. They're really good friends of ours, and I'm always kind of promoting their wines only because they make a really great product. They're very fun to deal with, and I really like that smaller boutique winery style where they're really putting a lot of love and care into every single bottle. Anyways, I appreciate you reaching out, especially considering that I guess it was a friend of yours that posted and said that if you want to talk to an Airbnb pro, you're the girl.
We discovered Airbnb, my partner and I, like a long time ago, and we used to be kind of suckers for like boutique hotels.
Yep.
Like fancy decor and just weird stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But Airbnb has been awesome. Yeah, we just came back from a trip. We went to Nashville, Memphis, and Chicago.
Okay.
We much used it almost the entire time. Honestly, we both love it. It's so cool.
So what is it about going with Airbnb versus a hotel that's been attracting you and keeping you going back every time?
Well, we like road trips, and so usually when we travel, we use pretty much exclusively hotels.com or Airbnb.
Yep.
And the only time we end up in a hotel is if we can't find an Airbnb in a location we wanted for like a reasonable price. And depending on the city, that could be tough. I think it's just really appealing. We always say, "Oh, the kitchen, it'll come in handy. Like we'll make dinner." We never always eat out, but somehow it's still nice to have the privacy of like a whole house or a whole condo, and to be able to just like walk out and nobody knows you're a tourist.
Yeah, and exactly, you kind of feel like one of the locals. So as much as you're staying, so obviously you've never done the shared space option on Airbnb.
Oh, no.
I've actually heard, I'd be anxious to talk to somebody about what that experience is like, just because, I've done standard B&Bs overseas, and even though some of these times it's a house and the homeowners are on one end and you're on the other, I still feel like I'm in their home. Like it just doesn't feel like it's my own space. So when you said that I use hotels.com too, that's one of my big things. Are you finding that the price differences, even with hotels.com, are you finding the price differences so significant that it doesn't make sense to go back to hotel stays sometimes?
Yeah, honestly, we only stay in hotels if it's a long day of travel and we don't care that we get like a roadside hotel.
Mm-hmm.
But like with the hotels.com app, even like the price is always comparable to Airbnb. So we went to Nashville. We stayed in East Nashville.
Yep.
The only hotels we could find were like $10 cheaper than the entire house we rented.
Yeah, sometimes it doesn't make sense to go to a hotel then.
Yeah, like when you have a backyard, you have a kitchen if you need it. And my partner snores sometimes, so I honestly have something with a separate bedroom, just in case. That's also like a really nice bonus that you can't get away from snoring in a hotel room.
No, I have noise cancellation earphones for that. Again. Let's talk about Airbnb. It is part of that sharing economy. Of course, the new trend that you also associate with Uber as the big one for that, where people started sharing their cars and sharing rides. And of course, the Airbnb answer is to share rooms. So sharing rooms in your home, sharing your home on its own, lending it out to people, basically becoming your own little landlord in a way. So it makes sense for particular things, but I know that I am not one of those early adopters for marketing purposes, meaning I'm not going to jump into something that is that trendy that quick until I actually know one way or the other. This is not like I'm buying a $20 something. This is usually I'm planning to stay in someone's home that I don't know, that is not necessarily a business, and I just want to hear other opinions first before I make a decision on what I'm doing. So I started last year, I think was my first one. I had booked about 2 in a very short period of time. So the first one was to Santa Monica. I wanted someplace that was in a good location. I do not want to be taking taxis everywhere in the LA area. I wanted, my husband needed to be at meetings nearby, and I wanted to be close enough to a lot of shopping, restaurants, other things, because my son and his girlfriend were joining us, and I wanted to make sure that that was their first time in that area, that they had everything within a very short distance of them. So I needed to make sure of that. Also, because it was their first time in the area, yes, they wanted to stay near us, but cost-wise in Santa Monica, if you've never stayed there, if you want to get a really decent hotel, it can be quite pricey, especially down by the waterfront. So I looked through Airbnb. We managed to find a great 2-bedroom place that was in a fairly quiet building in a residential area just outside of the main tourist area of Santa Monica. So it was a quick 5-minute walk to anywhere we needed to go. So location was great. Price was... for the same price of one hotel room, we basically got a 2-bedroom apartment that had a balcony, it had a secure entrance, and it had a self-check-in, which has always been a pretty big deal for me. This whole idea of meeting somebody and being in their home when they're there is kind of takes away from that whole being on vacation thing. Then I kind of feel a little different about staying in someone's house. It's just me and my funny thing. So that turned out really well. It was easy check-in, easy leave. It was convenient, good size rooms. Everything went really well, actually. So that was our first time. Around that same time, I'd also booked a cottage here in the Muskoka area of Ontario. So they don't just do condos, apartments, and homes, but somebody who wants to rent out their cottage if they're not getting enough views or bookings or anything through any of the other traditional cottage booking websites that are out there, they're now looking at Airbnb to put it on. And from what I've been hearing, great reviews on that as well. So do you have any horror stories or tips? So you got some Airbnb newbies that'll be listening and watching this weekend. So what would be some of your biggest either warnings or tips or something so that people get the best experience and don't get scared away from it? Okay.
The super hosts are always pretty good to look out for. Read the reviews though, like for sure.
Yeah, I've actually picked out on some really, one of the places that we stayed, if I didn't read the reviews, I didn't know that there was a water issue.
Yeah. Like
because that's not something that they check the box when they're filling out the forms, right?
Yeah. Honestly, pretty much just read the reviews, ask any questions if you can. I really like reviews where they say the host is responsive, really responsive, will reply to your messages.
Yes.
Because they can't fix your issues, but as long as they don't ignore you. We had one at one point. It wasn't enough. Everything was good, but the Wi-Fi didn't work. The Wi-Fi and the air conditioning, and they just...
Those are two of my priorities.
Right? And just ended up saying, oh, we didn't know. But then we read reviews, and it's like, no, you did know. You just didn't want to say we're having internet issues right now, and the air conditioner is not working 100% of the time. They just kind of played it dumb.
So we booked, there was 10 of us, I believe, that were staying in this place. I wanted a large space that had enough bedrooms for everybody. I wanted enough common area space because we were planning to have an anniversary party. I wanted outdoor space because it was in the middle of the summer and I want to be outside. And we were wanting to make sure that it is a waterfront, only because we want it to be going down to the lake. The idea of my niece and nephews going out on the water, that was sort of a primary thing. And this place checked all the boxes. The price was reasonable. We can communicate with the owner back and forth on an ongoing basis to ask all the questions we needed. It was a great entertaining space. It actually just turned out to be a perfect thing because we have tried before trying to find a cottage or a summer stay place for all of us at times before, and we've never had any luck, and we've always had to book 6 to 9 months in advance. And with all of our working schedules, it's difficult for us to find a date that we can all get together, let alone all get together on one particular weekend that there's a cottage available. So that's one of the things that it kind of just worked out for us, because not everyone always thinks of Airbnb for cottage rentals. But now that I told you, of course, you're going to start looking at Airbnb. Now you're going to have you're going to be taking up the spots that I want for next summer. So I won't tell you where I'm going. How's that? Okay. So now that I've talked about what it is, let's talk about who may use this. So I just spoke to a friend of mine who says that she uses Airbnb a lot for a couple reasons. One, when she travels, she usually has her dog with her. So you, just like hotels, you do have the option to choose a place that allows pets or is pet friendly. Pets don't want to be cooped up in a very small hotel room, even if it does allow you to have pets in there. Some people will allow you to bring their dog in, and because there's going to be common area spaces in an apartment, condo, or home, your pet's going to have a little bit more roaming room if you have to go out during the day at all. So that's one of the benefits of an Airbnb versus a hotel. The other thing is when they're kids, when you're involved. So if you're bringing your kids along, the fact that there's a living room area, you can put the kids to bed early, you're in a second room. It's kind of like having a really big suite. And for cost reasons, taking your children to go and eat out 3 times a day when you're traveling, you're in a big city, is not only expensive, but inconvenient sometimes. Sometimes the kids are just happy having a bowl of cereal in the morning, and having that kitchen space that you can just keep them in their regular routine, bring any food and drinks that you need with you, some of their favorite things that you can kind of stay on that routine when you're traveling with your kids. We're going to have a whole episode on traveling with kids coming up in... I think just before Christmas sometime, just to give you some tips on that, but that'll be for another show. You're kind of a newbie with Airbnb too, you said, right?
Yeah, I've rented 3 times. So one in New Jersey, one in Fall River, Nova Scotia, and the other one in like just outside of Barrie.
Okay, so you've had the small town versus big city style thing. Are
Yeah.
you noticing? See, I've always done mine just in big cities.
Okay.
Right? We rented a cottage last summer in the Muskoka area, but I knew the town and the area already.
Yeah.
So it wasn't, aside from that one particular place being new to us, the town wasn't new to us. But other than that, it was like Santa Monica, Toronto, right? So it's always been really big places.
Yeah.
So do you find, what's the big difference? Are you finding it's more actual homes in smaller towns? Like what kind of places did you rent so far?
Yeah, so the one in Fall River, Nova Scotia, that was like right outside of Halifax, and it was attached to a home, so it was a apartment attached to this huge home.
Almost like a granny flat kind of thing?
Mm, no, not really, but like it was a huge home, and the apartment was like on the other side, like it looked like it was underneath the house.
Okay.
So it was huge in there too. So it was like apartment style, like really great. And the one thing I liked about that is the bed was so freaking comfortable.
Is that not the biggest priority? That's what I told Mélanie on the last call today. I sent Norm by himself. I booked the Airbnb for him and I sent him. He came home. He did nothing but complain about the bed. Right? I have to go to a chiropractor now and blah, blah, blah. Like it's such a big deal. And I noticed that if I have a bad sleep, right? Or if I'm traveling a lot, like if you don't have a comfortable bed.
Yes, that is high priority. And we mentioned, my sister and I, when we went, we mentioned it to the host, like, holy crap, like this bed is amazing. She said, when we decided to go all in on doing this Airbnb, the number one thing that we knew we had to spend a lot of money and invest in was the bed.
How come that's not a checkbox? You know, on the options when you have to filter, like everyone goes, this, this Superhost or whatever has a 5-star rating for its cleanliness. I want to have this Superhost has a 5-star rating for their bed.
Yes. And like, it's clean, like, that they invested money in this bed just from like the way it looks. And then as soon as you get in and like your sleep is everything on vacation.
That's the whole idea of vacation, is to rest.
Right. Bed. So that was for Fall River. For New Jersey, that one was a little like, I liked it and it served the purpose. However, there was a full family above us, which we were not aware of.
Feet.
And yes. And like, 7, 8 o'clock in the morning, you're hearing kids screaming and like running across, and like, which is fine. We need to get up early anyways, but like we didn't know that this was going to happen, and we were their first guests.
Okay, so that would be one of those situations where it does pay to read reviews, and if they haven't had any reviews yet, that usually means that they're newbies to this, right?
Yeah. It was a great space. We didn't have a kitchen or anything. It was just kind of serve the purpose of letting us sleep there and like get ready. And then we were gone all day anyways, because we just hit New York pretty much every day. But like the subway was conveniently like a 5-minute walk.
Okay.
So that was good. And it was like close to like, so we got to like explore New Jersey, which we probably wouldn't have done had we had been in the city.
Correct.
And I had been to New York before, and the girl I was with, she had been there before. So it was a little like it was a very different experience. Plus, it was a lot more cheaper to do it that way than to rent, you know, in Manhattan, had like, which we'd done before.
The other kind of cool thing is that when you're traveling, especially for expense purposes, you really have a chance to kind of pick and choose the experience that is good for you. So hotels, you know what to expect. Unless it's a very boutique style place or higher end where there's additional staff there to meet all kinds of other needs and provide other services. For the most part, Airbnbs can range depending on what you need for them. So I've stayed at another place in Airbnb down in Prince Edward County, and this was more of an inn or lodge style place where the person not only greeted us to hand us the keys, but gave us a quick tour of the place, and it was more of a classic B&B style rental. I've also stayed at other places where this would be some of the controversy. There are some big cities, and especially condo buildings, where they make their condo owners pretty much swear that they are not going to rent through Airbnb. And it's only because their condo board, representing the people who own those spaces, the neighbors, do not want strangers coming in out of their building all day. So they're very quick to, some of them are very strict about not allowing Airbnb rentals, but they're still happening. So here's how it works. As an example, I've rented one before in Toronto, because I can use that as a big example because there's so many of them there and you won't know which one. But after I rented the space online, I immediately got an email through the communication system asking me for a contact number and email. So I thought that wasn't a big deal. Even though the Airbnb site says at the end, only communicate through the Airbnb app, I realized afterwards, because I was still new with this whole Airbnb rental thing, that I should have just paid attention a little bit more and not communicated on the side. Didn't turn out to be this really evil thing or anything. It actually turned out to be the condo owner, I guess, has been renting it out through a rental service. And there are building almost like rental businesses out there who are taking care of these Airbnb rentals on behalf of Airbnb hosts. So as a condo owner, he reached out to this company, and this company basically acts as the go-between. So I've never actually spoke to the condo owner at all, don't know anything about him, but I was told by this service, even when they messaged me directly through the Airbnb thing, I didn't realize that that's not who I was dealing with right at first, but then I finally figured it out once I was told not to speak to the doorman, not to talk to the other neighbors, and that if anyone asks me, I'm there to visit so-and-so. If you're listening on the podcast, I just used air quotes on the so-and-so. So they gave me a name that I'm supposed to drop as I walk in the door in case somebody asks me who I am and what I'm doing there. So it kind of made me a little bit nervous. It was a very quiet building anyhow, but from what I've heard from other people who have stayed in similar places in downtown Toronto, that kind of thing keeps happening. Went to a lockbox outside of the building in a local 7-Eleven. That's another thing that's very common. It also happened to me in Santa Monica as well, where there's a new business called Key Cafe, and they basically have these tiny little, almost like post office boxes that are set up in places like 7-Elevens and other corner stores throughout North America and beyond, I'm assuming. And they rent these little boxes, and that's where they do the key exchange. So I would get the code for that particular key lockbox, go to the 7-Eleven, I go in, one place it was, I had a special key I had to use, another place I had to use punch in a PIN code, and another place I've done before where just having my phone with the little QR code will unlock the box. So once the box is unlocked, you take the keys. lock the box back up again, and then you basically walk in like any homeowner would. And then at the end of your stay, you also have to put the keys back in that lock box. And there's a whole app that works it, but Key Cafe is the big one, but there's some other ones that are out there. So having that Key Cafe thing now gives that other level of anonymity to the homeowner. So I don't know who they are. It's usually a second set of keys. And now having an additional service that I communicate with, I am a few steps beyond meeting the homeowner or having any attachment to it. So just keep that in mind, that the person you're communicating with, or who sends you the confirmation information, or who is asking you about why you're staying there, what you need, all that kind of thing, it may not be the homeowner. So just keep that in mind, that it's usually a service that someone is hired to do that kind of thing for them. And again, Airbnb is not just for renting spaces that you need to stay at. If you have a space, you can also rent out as well. So you'll notice in the Airbnb app or website, if you've never been to it before, at the top menu, you'll see where there is a host menu as well. So if you want to rent out your own space or rent a room in your house, you can do so as well. The last time I was looking, because I actually was considering it, about doing an Airbnb versus a hotel, because there's such a huge price difference in Toronto. So I thought, well, I'm going to take a look at it next time I go to New York. Well, I was pricing it out, and even with my discount on hotels.com is not huge, but the prices were pretty much the same. So if there's no price incentive for me, and I think that's one of the things that I still have to get over, the price difference would be a reason why I would go to an Airbnb. Because a lot of times when I am going away, yes, a kitchen's handy if I have to do a lot of work or something. But if I'm going on vacation or I'm going to be going out for most of the time, the priority of having my own kitchen is not a big deal to me. Location is a big deal to me. But if there's no savings money, and if I still have to go through the rigmarole, this is probably one of my only pet peeves about this whole... I have to go to someplace 3 blocks away to go pick up the keys, right? And especially downtown Toronto. It's not like I can just pull up on the side of the road in front of the 7-Eleven to go grab the keys. You always have to go find a parking spot or a meter or something to go and park, and then walk over, get the keys, go back and move your car, and then you have to go find some... Like, it's a little bit of a hassle that way. I still haven't figured out why they haven't done things like a key code. Why haven't people put key codes like on their doors for Airbnb? That's my shout out to all the Airbnb people out there. If you're a host, put like a lockbox like real estate agents do, right?
Actually, every Airbnb I've been at, they've had that.
No, I have had nothing but they call them like Key Cafe things. So they're like post office boxes that are in convenience stores.
Oh.
So I have the same thing in Santa Monica, I had the same thing in Toronto, and they're like little post office boxes, and then that's where they store the keys.
Oh,
so it's a central location away from the place, because in condo buildings they won't necessarily, and I think that's part of the issue, is that every time I rented, it's been like a condo, and I have a funny feeling that I keep renting places that they're not supposed to be renting it out.
I haven't experienced that. I've always had, well, I guess it's always been like kind of a freehold, like a house or something,
okay.
But it's always been a lockbox, in which I agree that is like, that's the best way. I don't really, like, no offense to anyone doing the Airbnb, but same thing for them. I don't need to interact with you. Like, I've already paid. I know what amenities are available.
I don't want the tour.
No, I don't want the tour. I just want to get there and relax. And like, if I have any questions, there's that texting option. And then other than that, like, just give me the key. I'll leave it, whatever. And that's it. Like, that's the whole thing. I don't need you to spend 10 hours telling me about this place. Like, I already read it. Like, got it.
Now, when I was talking about renting out a room, I'm not kidding. So I've actually heard of people who are very happy to sleep on someone's sofa if it's only going to cost them $40. So especially if you are almost like backpacking through Europe, if you want to just stay in a room in someone's house, there are so many people out there who are renting it just for extra income. So if you aren't nervous about staying at a stranger's home and you like that whole B&B thing, if you like that idea that you might be staying with 2 or 3 other travelers, there is an option I would suggest, though, that you opt for what they call a superhost. On the Airbnb website, there's a little switch that you can select during the filter process when you're looking for a place that says that it's a superhost. That just means that Airbnb has basically awarded them that title because they are good at renting. They've never had complaints or problems. Cleanliness is good, et cetera, whatever their qualifications are. So by selecting that, you have less of a chance of just staying in some guy's house who's only done this once before and just wants it for some quick cash, and may not be showing the place properly online, kind of the bait and switch thing. So just to be safe, I would always suggest kind of looking for that super host if you are nervous and you're planning to be more economical in your travel choices and choose a place that is more of a private room or sharing a place with somebody else. Sometimes if you're willing to share, they might be renting out one condo that's 2 bedrooms to 2 different travelers. So just kind of keep that in mind, that you could not necessarily be the only person staying in this place. So unless you say, I want the whole place to myself, you will get a whole range of options that are out there. So the other thing that they do besides renting out homes and places to stay is they also do experiences and restaurants. I'm not going to touch too much on that today. The experiences part are the things to do section. So if you've always browsed through TripAdvisor and looked at options to place to take the kids, or you're going to have a free evening, you don't just want to go out for dinner, you want to look at entertainment nearby. There's a lot of businesses, not just restaurants, but other businesses that have come up with tour packages, day tours, half tours, evening events, that kind of thing, that are going on around the time that you're going to be there. And they're now marketing through the Airbnb platform. So not only can you just book a place to stay, but if you need something interesting to do on the weekend that you're going to be there, you can also start to browse around through the experience section of that city. You might be able to find some other tickets that you can buy directly through that app. So you just get a little bit more of an all-around experience within the Airbnb world by doing accommodations as well as experience. Now, the only other thing that they're starting to do now is a little bit more on the restaurants, where restaurants can go through places, things like Yelp, and yes, and TripAdvisor, Open Table's another big one. I think there's another ones through, there's another whole episode I talked about all these apps, but you can go through all these different apps to book restaurants directly with their reservation systems online. It also allows you to get points and all kinds of fun stuff. Well, Airbnb is getting on the bandwagon now too, and so they are offering the same thing. So you'll find some restaurants in some of these larger cities are now allowing direct reservations to happen through the Airbnb portal as well. So basically, almost everything you need for an overnight getaway someplace, you can probably get through Airbnb now. So good for them. Now, when it comes to when do I use Airbnb versus hotel. So a couple things. I made some notes so I wouldn't forget this. So it really does depend on what I'm looking for and the purpose of my stay. So dollars are a big factor. As an example, I just booked a overnight stay in Toronto a couple weeks from now, and I'm paying $139 a night within 2 blocks of where I need to stay for an event that I'm going to. But any of the other higher end hotels right now are operating closer to $400 a night, even for the little boutique hotels. So price wise, it just made more sense for me to spend the $139. Oh, by the way, and that's just for a classic king size room. I could have got a two bed place so that I could have brought friends with me to stay, and we could have spent less than $200 a night. So that option is always available. So that was a good one. The other thing is that if I need or want a kitchen, like I mentioned with my friend who brings her kids on Airbnb trips, sometimes I have so much to do, or I have things I need to work on by myself in there, and not having to go out to eat every single meal is very handy. So if I have a lot to do, I'm happy with making myself a coffee with the coffee machine that's usually provided in these kitchens, picking up a few snacks or fresh fruit or whatever, and I can kind of sustain myself for most of the day that way until I have to go out later in the evening. So having a kitchen sometimes is a really big plus for me. Location, as I mentioned, is a really big deal, especially when you're using these larger cities and depending on how good their public transportation system is. If I am going to be at a place that is not necessarily in the hub of where all of the tourism and attractions are, I happen to be out of the way going for a meeting someplace. Sometimes Airbnb allows me more options because there may not be a lot of hotels there. Same thing in smaller cities like here in Sudbury, Ontario. We're not that small, but we're very spread out. I would say like we're mini Los Angeles that way. We're very spread out. So you need a car pretty much to go anywhere. So if I was coming into Sudbury, I would, and I was from out of town, I would be looking through Airbnb, depending on where I needed to go while I was in the area, because this way I'd have a little bit more flexibility on where to stay depending on traffic, depending on the time of day, and depending on how far away everything is. Because right now, driving traffic with the outlying areas, you're looking at about 25 to 30 minutes coming into the city. So Airbnb would be a good place to look for if you had to stay in a sprawling city like Sudbury or Los Angeles. It's so funny. I'm sure the people in Sudbury are saying, why are you comparing it to Los Angeles? Because that's kind of, we do have a lot of similarities. We just don't have a Hollywood yet. Film studio, yes. Hollywood, not so much. Okay. And then the last thing has to do with who I'm traveling with. So I've noticed, because sometimes I'm not always traveling with my husband. Sometimes I'm traveling with a friend, a coworker, one of my co-hosts. Sometimes I've traveled with my brother. If we are looking for a place to stay, that it's very hard to find hotel rooms now that may necessarily have 2 queen beds, especially for some of the higher end hotels. I find it's kind of a rare thing to be finding 2 queens unless you want to get into a suite situation. And even then, somebody's got to take the sofa bed unless you want to sleep together. So I am a grown woman and I prefer to have my own bed unless my husband's sleeping with me. So as much as I love my friends, I don't love them that much. I need my space, especially if I'm traveling and it's considered a mini holiday for me. If I can sprawl out on the bed, I will. So trying to find places that have more than one bed, unless I go into a larger suite style thing, I'm looking at even more and more money depending on the location in the city. So having that flexibility of saying, okay, well, I can choose the place I'm looking for based on the number of beds, the number of bedrooms, the number of bathrooms, and I can kind of tailor it that way. And because it's still cheaper sometimes than hotels, I can have that flexibility where I can be renting a home and a bunch of us can stay. And there's a lot of great options that are out there for things like that. I found them in Quebec, just outside around the Gatineau area. I found them down the Niagara area. There's a lot of places that you can keep an eye out for, especially if you're going to be traveling with friends to go away someplace. So all you girls out there looking for bridal shower places to go, bachelorette parties, yes, there's bachelor parties, as long as you are being open with them about what you're using the space for. Sometimes they'll have homes that it's not just renting rooms, but you can actually rent the entire home on its own. It might be set up more of a lodge or inn style that has different rooms to rent with a common area for everyone, like a classic B&B, but they may have an option letting you know that they will rent the entire space for you for a certain price. So you can keep an eye on those things. So they're good for 2 or more people who aren't necessarily spouses. So that would be a good one for that. So what's your favorite? So out of all the things that you've done and the best and worst, what's your favorite tip that you would say that for your first time Airbnb thing, saying like, oh my God, you have to do this or have to watch out for this?
I'd say like when you're booking online, like go through all the filters that like they provide to you and like be very like clear as to what you're looking for. Like if it is a kitchen, like make sure it has a kitchen. Like if it is a private house instead of a private room, make sure you read the fine details, but then also read the descriptions of each place, because it will tell you like, you know, what you're allowed to bring, what you're not allowed to bring, what you're allowed to do.
House rules.
Yeah, there's always house rules, and make sure you read them and to make sure they fit with what you're trying to do and what purpose it's trying to serve. Like Like when I was in New Jersey, we were just using that as a base. Like we're just gonna go there at night to sleep. In the morning, we're gone. We didn't really need a kitchen. However, when we talked about it after, it would have been good to have coffee in the morning instead of going to look for it in New Jersey.
Yeah. Exactly. And and letting them know. Did you leave a review saying that, as much as you liked it, it would have been really nice to have a coffee machine for them to put in a Keurig or something downstairs wouldn't have been that big of a deal, right?
I did say that. Also, having a full length mirror, like
oh my God, you're such a girl.
It sounds so, I know, but it's like, it sounds so like minimal, but like those little things make it, because like hotels, they have them behind the door.
Sometimes.
The bed is everything. As I said earlier, like invest in the things that people will appreciate the most. Like I'll remember that time in Fall River forever because of that freaking bed. Like, and the girl who runs it, she's a flight attendant for Air Canada, so she knows. Like,
well, because that's her priority, that she probably between all the hotels, Airbnbs, and everything else that she stays at when she's traveling. She knows what's good and what's not good.
That's right. And I think like, the hotel versus Airbnb, you're allowed to have that like space to make your own instead of just like, having conversations on the bed in the hotel. Like if people are visiting or if you're with a couple other people.
That's one of my other pet peeves. But say, come over to our room for a drink. No, I really don't feel like coming to sit on your bed.
Right.
We don't know each other that well.
No, exactly. And it's like awkward, and like the bathroom's like right there, and like it's I don't know, it's a little inconvenient. But in an Airbnb, like you can decide how much space you want, like
common
whether
space.
You want, and how, like if you want an actual bedroom or just a bed, if you want the common space, if you want the full kitchen, like you can, however long you're staying there, like that's home.
And I think that's one of those things that I did mention, I think, in this episode, talking about when you said to read every single thing and to check all the boxes of what you really want. Because there's a difference between saying I want 2 beds and I want 2 bedrooms.
Yeah.
Right? Or because if you say I want 2 beds, there's a very wide range of definitions of what a bed is. It could be a roll-out little trundle bed from under the bed. It could be like one little half single thing, like a fold-out mattress futon thing. And then the other one is like a double sofa bed and there's no actual bedroom. Right? Exactly. So if you don't read it, because it doesn't just have the checkbox at the top, but when you read the description, if you scroll down, it actually has specifics. 1 queen bed, 1 sofa bed, 1 whatever. So you can actually, because that was really important to us when we rented the cottage, because there were like 10 of us and 2 kids. So the bed combination, because the kids are older, can't share a bed anymore. So it was, okay, well, I needed to have, this room has 2 twins, that works for the kids. This one has a queen, this one has this one. So I can kind of visualize of who was staying where, right? Yeah. So that no one yelled at me afterwards for getting a place and making them sleep on a sofa for a week.
Yeah, you have to read everything. That goes the same for like the amenities. Like if you're looking for somewhere that has a hot tub, do you want your own hot tub or do you want to be sharing with other people?
Oh, yes. Because sometimes the hot tub could be out in a condo unit, right? And like, so much as they say it's a pool, it's not a private pool. So you may be meeting the neighbors a little more often than you think.
Right. Yep. I see in a place outside of Barrie, and the whole purpose was like cottage type feel. So it was in Innisfil, and it was still like within like the actual city, but it was outside of it. And like I wanted a hot tub and a hot tub and sauna. So like we rented this like cottage type, and it was private. It was like that we were the only ones there. But I'm thinking, holy crap! Like imagine like it was like a shared, like what a way to meet people, like
the neighborhood hot tub. Yeah. Gross. Well, not to mention, I mean, Melanie also commented about the hot tub, about how as much as they have the hot tub there, like the chemicals were way too high and the levels. So, and I mean, I know we're really particular about how we treat ours. So that's one of those things that I don't know if I'd go I wouldn't know if I'd go into someone's home hot tub. Right?
Yeah, you have to, like I said, read the reviews.
Yeah.
And like get to know the host too. Like, you know, how she communicates with you, how she wants you to treat the home. Like, Because if she says like, this has to be put back or this needs to be cleaned or this, like, you'll kind of know how she takes care of it. And, that goes hand in hand with like the hot tub and the pool. Like if she does that to her home, likely it'll be the same for how she treats that, I think, anyways.
Well, my other thought would be, now it just dawned on me, if there are no house rules, I would worry.
I would worry too.
Which means that they don't care how you treat their place, which means they don't care how they treat their place.
Right.
Right? Oh my God. Yeah. So it's one of those things that now I'm thinking about it. Like as an experiment, write out your own list of, if someone was staying in your house, what rules would you leave for them? Right? And then kind of use that as okay, well, this is kind of the things that I need to hear, look for, that's important to me for when you're choosing a place.
Yeah.
Right? Because everyone's style of living is different.
Yes. So,
and you also have to mention that, like, that's not their vacation spot. That's their actual home.
That's right.
And that's, there's sometimes, Melanie and I were talking earlier about how the place that she stayed at one place that you can tell the guy is like, he was very good to answer and be very responsive, but he doesn't live there. Right. And I told her, I said, that's what I've been running into a lot, is that especially in the bigger cities, they end up being condos or apartments of people, like they almost look brand new. So they buying it as an investment because they're traveling in and out of town, but they're only there a few times a year. And then they basically just Airbnb it out for the rest of the time. Yep. Right. So, and you can tell, like, there's not even a picture on the wall. Right. It's like the paint. It's the paint. What do they call that? The builder's white on stuff. It's, the bare minimum. Right. But everything that you need. So it's like a coffee machine. The bed's good. It may have a little sofa and stuff, TVs, all the basic stuff or whatever. Like it's meant for just come in, do your stuff. Wi-Fi is working and leave. Yeah. So I think that works for me. Yep. Right. But some people need to have like this whole, like the big space and everything else. And anyways, that's good. So for those who are listening on the podcast, I actually taped a little how-to video on how to click from one thing to another so that you can go through step-by-step on how to book your very first Airbnb booking and all the things to look for and what all the menus mean. I actually walk through it step-by-step. So in the show notes, you're going to find the link to that. If you're watching on the video, it is showing up at the end of the video. And then I'll also have a link in the notes on the YouTube channel. So you can go directly to that if you wanted to share it to anybody else that may be interested in booking their first Airbnb. So hopefully I covered the whole how to in that video. It's my first time doing one of those little clickable video things. So again, I'll get better at it. As I'm going through these things, you're all learning with me. So an interesting thing happened, and I wanted to close the show with this. I don't look at our podcast stats. I haven't since we really started the show about a year ago, only because I know that I would get focused on the numbers more than the content about, only so many people downloaded this and that kind of thing. And I know all of you marketers out there saying you need to know the numbers. I know that. But I really wanted to get in the groove of doing this, and especially having new co-hosts, just us organizing and keeping the content relevant and fresh and updated. And now we're incorporating video. I don't want to get bogged down by worrying about who is watching and why. But I was looking through our podcast hosting platform, Libsyn, the other day, and I just by a coincidence clicked on the stats thing because I was looking for another fact for something else. And it turns out that as much as we are from a little northern Ontario city, 2/3 of our listeners are from the US. Who knew? So welcome Americans who are listening to this show or watching it now on YouTube. We're not as far away from Toronto as people think we are. There's even people living outside of Toronto that think that we are like 8 to 10 hours away. I can drive to Toronto and back for shopping and lunchtime afternoon if I needed to. It's about 4-hour drive, I guess, from here with the new highways. So we're not that far from the bigger cities. It's easy for us to go to Toronto. It's easy for us to go to Ottawa. And we do have more than 300 lakes in our area. So you can tell I work a lot with Sudbury tourism, right? So that's my little plug. So for those of you who are listening and not knowing where Sudbury is, we're growing leaps and bounds on an ongoing basis, and we are one of the first, not the first, but one of the first podcasts from this area. So yes, it's something we're very proud of. But we are now going to make sure we tailor a lot of our content and things so that anyone from anywhere, because we had listeners from Australia, I think I saw a few overseas in I think in Spain and England. So there's a few people here and there that are listening to certain episodes. So we want to make sure that every episode has something for you to learn and to wet your whistle, definitely pun intended. So anyways, welcome to all you who are not listening from Northern Ontario. And for those of you who are in Northern Ontario, tell your friends. We need to have a bigger support here from our local Canadians for sure. The other thing, because I want to know more about who is listening and from where, so as much as I know the kind of from where people are listening, I don't know a lot about who you are. So I created through the Libsyn hosting platform a bit of a survey. It's kind of like a very quick demographic. It is, the information goes directly to Libsyn, which is our hosting platform, as I mentioned. The results will come to me eventually once we hit a certain threshold of surveys turned in. This is just going to allow us to kind of get a better picture on the general demographics, male, female, where specifically you're listening from, how old you are, that kind of thing. And that, again, is not only going to tailor content and particular episodes, so make sure that we're always providing something that you're interested in and want to learn about, but when we're starting to plan things like live events, future trips that one or more of us will go to talk about a certain event, feature a particular product, or just to go and eat and drink someplace fun, at least we'll have a little bit more of a chance to go to places that we know that listeners are interested in or where they're located. So if you can get a chance, I'm going to have the survey in the show notes. It is also on our Facebook page. I will post it again, so it's pinning it near the top. If you could take 2 seconds to fill that out, we would really appreciate it. Yeah, we just want to learn more about you. As much as you can see us, we can't see you now. Or if you're listening to us, we don't get to hear back from you. So the more communication and the more we know about each other, I think the better it's going to be for everyone. So the other couple of things that are happening, we are working on a live event, which is coming up here in November, again in the Sudbury area. Just finalizing details with the venue on what we're going to be, what the topic's going to be, and just kind of some other fun details. I'm arranging for some prizes and giveaways as well. So that should be coming up hopefully within the week. So keep an eye on all the social media feeds. So that is Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook, wherever you're following us on. I'll have the details on that shortly. And again, yes, it's going to be in Sudbury, but we are looking for a new location to go and visit in early 2019. So we're looking for suggestions. So please send us those. As I mentioned, Cynthia's in Australia right now, so keep an eye out. Not only is she posting things on the social media channels right from where she is down under, but she is collecting all kinds of cool little videos and interviews and things from down there. So we're going to put together at least one podcast or two coming up in the very near future. So you can keep an eye out for that. And I am working on, with our co-host, to have a really big event that we are planning here in Northern Ontario for 2019. So date is still getting finalized, location. I am planning to bring, basically it's going to be our show on steroids. A lot of eating, a lot of drinking, a lot of travel talk, a lot of culture, a lot of laughs, maybe having some little contest and games. We're just going to make sure Cynthia has a different game as opposed to Never Have I Ever, because that and alcohol turned into a pretty big tequila night for our last live event. So I can't guarantee how that's going to go. But anyways, we're always looking for some suggestions. Please keep in touch. We love the communication style. You know, the whole concept of eating and drinking and is sharing with other people. It just allows us that starting point. We're sharing a plate, we're sharing a table, we are breaking bread, or we are toasting each other. And that just allows us to kind of learn more about each other in that way. And if, however we can help do that, that's just kind of our goal, I guess. So enjoy this crisp fall weather, and maybe next week I won't be all alone. We'll see. In the meantime, stay warm, have a great weekend, and we'll see you next week. Cheers. Okay, this is what the opening screen looks like. It could be that you haven't logged in or created an account with Airbnb yet. So you may have a different opening screen that is kind of like a starter thing asking you to create an account and which area and dates were you looking for. But if you already have an account, this is the opening screen that you'll automatically come to. So there are different options, just to give you a quick tour. So this search field up here just refers to a starting standard search field. So if you're looking for downtown Toronto, if you are looking for Midtown West New York, you can be kind of specific, but it just gives you something to start with. That's if you just don't have, if you want to start with a place first. And then on this right-hand side, you're going to see where it says host. That means if you want to host a place. The saved section is going to be where your wish list is. So if you've been kind of peeking through some places in a particular area and you want to save them for future ones, I'll click on it just to show you what I've got. So in Toronto, I have 2 listings that I've saved for future use. Someday I'm going to take my husband to Hawaii, so I have 3 listings that I really like there. And then we were looking at renting a cottage, which we did actually through Airbnb this past summer. And this is where I would click on that one. So from there, you can keep adding to them. You can name them however you want, organize them, add and remove listings as you want. Now under the trips section, this would be if I had anything booked. So right now I do have one booked for Toronto coming up. So we're going to do that one from scratch in a second. The messages section would be messages to and from either an Airbnb host or if you are the host between one of your guests. So it's just like an in-house messaging app where you can send messages back and forth. You can either get your messages directly through the website or you can do it straight through email because every time you send or receive a message, you do usually get an email or sometimes even a text message if you've registered with your cell phone. And then, of course, there's a standard help menu in case you miss any of this or you have specific questions that's not getting answered yet. Okay, so let's pretend I am going to look for a place to stay in Toronto because most of the hotels are booked or the ones that are booked are available are way too expensive for what I need. So I'm going to try Toronto and it automatically gives me some suggestions here. Toronto, Ontario, just as the general location. Homes in Toronto basically just says you're looking for an accommodation in Toronto. Experiences in Toronto would be specialty things to do that you can pre-book. So you don't even have to have a place to stay. You can actually use Airbnb to look for something to do while you're in Toronto. And then there's Toronto Downtown. Toronto, Canada is just another usual search term, as well as Downtown Toronto. So I'm just going to do regularly Toronto. Now, I'm going down for a wine show in a couple of weeks. So I am going to go and be very specific on this overnight stay that I want to do. So let's just choose dates. Now I'm going to go over to, I'm looking for November the 7th, and I'm going to be checking out on the November 8th. So it automatically, by choosing the first date and the last date, it automatically fills it out up here, November 7th to 8th. So I hit apply. So the next field it's going to ask me, it's going to say, okay, well, how many people? So it's just going to be 1 adult. That's just me. I am no longer a child. Haha. Now, explore Toronto. I can look for homes, or again, I can mention experiences, but for the purpose of this show, we're just focusing on looking for accommodation. So you go under homes, and so when it says homes, it basically just means a place to stay. So there are a lot of options. So we already selected our dates, and we already selected our guests. So now as you can see, it's already showing me a lot of the listings for those dates available in the Toronto area on this map. But that's a long list, and I want to be a little bit more specific, even because right now 300 and plus homes, I don't have time to look for that many. So I've already selected how many guests. Now I want to say what home type. So these are the 3 options that are always available. I can either say I want to filter this down to places that I'm going to be completely alone at. I may opt to have a private room within someone's place. So this would be kind of like classic B&B operation. So if you were traveling and you didn't mind if the owner is there and they had a bedroom that they wanted to rent or something like that, but you still had your own space within it, or maybe it is a private suite within someone's house, you have that option. Or a shared room would basically be you're actually sharing a space like in an apartment type thing. So the owner would be there as well. So entire place, have a place to myself because I'm funny that way. And especially if it's your first time doing it, and because I tend to work a lot, socializing in these business trips is not my ideal holiday for me. But that's just me. You may like to go and socialize, so go ahead and choose whatever one works best for you. Now, if you click on the price option, it gives you a whole range, and it's just showing you out of all those 300 plus homes that were available, you'll see that there's a $13 price range, and it goes all the way up to $1,500 as the maximum. But the average nightly price of most of the homes that are listed in this price range so far of what I selected is averaging at about $221 Canadian. So actually that's not bad, because a lot of times the downtown Toronto rates, depending on if it's a busy season, are actually going to be more than that anyways. So I'm going to say I don't mind spending, let's just say I don't mind spending $100 a night. Let's see if there's something for around there. But there's no way I'm spending any more. Then I'll say 300, because then I started getting into regular hotel pricing and I might as well just go to a hotel. So I'm going to click apply. So now it's narrowed it down. So if there's still 300 plus homes, because I guess my 100 to 301 didn't really narrow it down that much. So you're starting to see the map again. You can also use this map if you have a very specific area you wanted to go to. So I'm going to be staying near the Royal Ontario Museum. So when I did my booking earlier this week, I actually used the plus and minus buttons to zoom in or zoom out. And then I scrolled around until I found the location of what I was looking for. So in my case, I'd be up here in the Yorkville section. So I was looking for places that were there. So if you don't want to do that and you're not that particular, but you just want to be downtown someplace, you can just zoom out and then it goes back to listing everything that's available. Now, there's a couple of other things called Instant Book. Basically, this just means that these are regular Airbnb hosts. They don't need to go through and do a host approval. Some people have been doing this so long that Airbnb basically says we can go ahead and guarantee it. They've never let us down before, so we can do that. So if that's important to you, like you need to book now, or if it's a place that you think is always going to get booked quickly, you can book right away. If you want trip type to narrow it down even further, you can look for either business related or just pleasure trip. So for families is what they call it. So these are the ones that families have stayed with before, and it has all the amenities and things that maybe you'd want to have if there was more than just two of you going, or if you were bringing some kids, you need to have a TV and stuff to entertain them. Work related would have things like workspace, Wi-Fi, and self check-in. So I happen to like these ones because I'm always working while I'm away. So I'm going to say I want workspace, Wi-Fi, and self check-in. Sounds great to me, and because I don't need any of the family stuff. So I can click apply. And now you'll see that because it's meant for work, it says the top rated homes offer reservation flexibility, and it also has all the self check-in, and they are used to dealing with people who go down to Toronto for work. So now my list of 300 places has now changed to 50 homes for work trips in this particular area. So there's a lot more other filters that we can look through. So let's just click on these if you want to get specific. So it's just myself. So, I mean, one bed is basically what I need, but it'd be interesting what bed actually qualifies. So when it says beds, keep in mind that it does not necessarily mean a classic standard queen or king size bed. So when it says bed, that could refer to a sofa bed. It could refer to a futon. Basically, anywhere that one person can sleep is considered a bed. So make sure you select these things very carefully. So beds, I want one. Bedroom, if I was traveling with a friend of mine and we each wanted separate bedrooms, I can actually say, let's narrow this down and make sure that I have 2 bedrooms. Or if someone's coming to meet and have a meeting with me at this place, I kind of want my bedroom separate from the living area. So making sure there's an actual bedroom is a pretty important thing to me. And of course, yes, I want a washroom. But again, if you're traveling with more people and you don't like sharing a bathroom, you can actually use this and say, I want to have 2 bathrooms. Now, when it comes to the beds, this is what I was referring to. If you select, I want 2 bedrooms, or sorry, only 1 bedroom, but I need 2 beds, it won't necessarily mean that you're going to have 2 beds in that bedroom. It could be 1 standard bed in the bedroom, and the second bed could be a sofa bed or a futon. So just keep that in mind about your bed selections. Once you've gone through this process and look at each individual listing, you'll have a better chance to read about what specifically is in each group. Okay, so now Superhost. So this would be, again, hosts that have really high ratings. They've been renting a lot through the Airbnb system. They don't have a lot of complaints. Everything goes really smoothly. So eventually Airbnb awards them with the Superhost designation. So this would just kind of narrow it down even further, that I don't have to worry that the hosts that are going to be in this list are first timers or anything. Accessibility is great. As you know, on this show, we're very big on accessibility. So choosing home features that have to do with accessibility, whether it is for sight or hearing, or if you need wheelchair access, all of that kind of thing will be listed here through accessibility. And then all of the amenities that you could be looking for. So Wi-Fi is a guaranteed, because that's part of the work system I looked for. Laptop friendly workspace was already included. Self check-in was already included. If I want to make sure there was other things like a washer and dryer, I check those. If I really needed to have some kind of a wireless intercom system, I can put that in there. But that only works is if the host listed their property with these same amenities checked off. Doorman, again, something that it might be included, it might not be, they may not have checked it off in their listing. So just keep these kind of open until you can read the individual listings, is my opinion. Now, for facilities, these are other things. If you have a car and you're driving into the city where you're staying, you may want to have parking nearby. So I'm actually flying into Toronto, so I won't need parking. But sometimes they may say on premises, but a lot of times they'll have details about parking elsewhere. I don't need a hot tub. I don't need a gym in the building, and I don't need a pool. I'm not there that long. Now, property type, if I don't want an apartment or a condo, I can leave only house checked. But in Toronto and downtown, I'm kind of knowing that I'm going to get mostly apartments and lofts. So really, I'm not that fussy about which ones of these I want. Now, for house rules, if I'm planning to entertain and having people over, I need to check this, because some Airbnb hosts don't want to have events in their house. Same thing with smoking allowed, or if you're planning to bring a pet with you. So none of these qualify for me for this trip. Now, neighborhoods, if you happen to know the names of your neighborhoods that you want to narrow this list down to, you can go ahead and click them off here. I'd be looking in the Yorkville section is what I did, but you can also use the map on the right-hand side again to narrow it down or zoom into the area that you want. And then host language, they do have different languages that you want to specify. So if you're French speaking and you want to deal with someone who does speak French, just make sure that's clicked so that you can ensure that someone is going to be able to help you in French, either at the Airbnb accommodation, so that in case you have any questions when you're there, at least you'll know you can communicate with somebody in the language that you want. So now, it sees in the bottom, I'm down to 39 homes. Okay, so from 39 homes for work trips. So now I've narrowed it down again, and you're going to see I have all these ratings, and I have, this one's an entire condominium. Of course, most of them in downtown Toronto are going to be that way. So I'm going to narrow this down a little bit further and say I want to be near the waterfront, closer to the entertainment district. So by going closer to this place, I've narrowed it down to 6 homes available that are considered perfect for work trips. And they are not necessarily sorted from highest to lowest. So depending on how many of these filters you've used, you may want to take a chance and resort these a little bit about adding more filters so that you narrow it down to a number of places that fit on one screen. So now you can look at each individual one. So let's just look at, this one sounds interesting. See, best location with CN Tower View. So let's see what this is like. Now it said $190 dollars per night. But interestingly enough, once you clicked on it, and it must be because there must be a discount for certain times of the year, it's actually showing here as $125 per night, which is a steal. So here's all the little photos that the user here, Jay, has uploaded. So you're seeing, I guess there's an indoor pool in this building, and there are, got a great view of the CN Tower. It says it will, the entire condominium, for $125 a night, you'll get a bedroom, 3 beds, and a bath. Now, again, scroll down here. Remember I said watch the bedrooms? So in the bedroom itself, there's 1 queen bed, and in the common space, which would be the living room, they've actually squeezed in another queen-size bed and a sofa bed in that common space. So it sounds like it's pretty tight, but if you and a couple of friends were going down, you could still stay in this place, but I guess because it's only one person, that's why he's charging me $125. So you can go through and read all the details on there. He's a super host. There's going to be a check-in with a lockbox, which is easy. I can see that 90% of recent guests gave the check-in process a 5-star rating. There's more of the description of what's required. 650 square foot condo unit. And then you'll be able to see all the other things that are ready to go. You can see all of those amenities, continuous access in the listing. There's a washer and dryer. He's got heating, which is always nice. There's an elevator in case I had to carry things up. Yes, there's a dinner. There's hangers in there if I needed it. Some safety features. And that's basically it. 1 night minimum stay. And then down here, if I really wanted to double check that this is not too good to be true, I can actually read through 98 different reviews for this place. So you can kind of scroll through all of them, all the different ones, and then you can even message the host directly if you have any specific questions. You can also find out things to do in that area, a little bit more about that neighborhood, and a little bit more detail exactly where this place is going to go. Because just like other travel booking places, you will not see the exact location, as it says down here, until after the booking is confirmed. They don't want people just showing up at the guy's house, I'm guessing. So check-in time for this place, because he's very strict on the no smoking, no parties, no pets. Check-in time is at 4 o'clock, and he wants you out by 10 a.m. the next morning. That works fine for me. And you have a good cancellation policy. Everyone is different. As long as you cancel before 4 o'clock on the day before, or November the 2nd, which is about 5 days prior to my trip, I'll get a full refund minus the service fee. So you can read through his policies on that, and it seems to be working fine. Now, so the last thing here that you would double check before you hit click is that the guest is just me. There's a cleaning fee here of $65. This is what he charges on top of just staying there that he will have to clean. So if you click on this, it's a one-time fee charged by the host to cover the cost of cleaning their space. So if you stayed here for 2 nights, you decided I'm going to stay here for 2 nights, the nightly fee will stay the same, but the cleaning fee will stay the same as well. So that would be $250 plus a $65. Now the service fee, this is what Airbnb charges. This is their little bonus for you using their system. Now, the last thing you have to worry about is that when you click book, it is not like clicking or booking a hotel room. When you click on this, it is going to want to charge you immediately. You do not get your place until everything goes through. So if you click on the booked section, let's just pretend I'm going to book it. I'm hoping this is going to work because I already had a place booked. There we go. Best view, highlights about the stay. And then if you click agree and continue, you're now going to go to, they want to notice a little difference. So again, there's your final price again. And then you can actually say, send him a little message. Hey, how's it going? Can't wait to stay there. Heard great things. Start a conversation with him anyhow. I'm not going to bother typing this in there because I don't want this guy to get a message and then it turns out I'm not staying there. So after this, you're going to get an email. You're going to go through and just do your standard payment options. You have to pay for the entire thing up front. You don't get to pay later like a hotel. There are options that if you are wanting to split cost with somebody, you can divide it into different credit cards, but that's going to be again on a different show. Now, if I wanted to go through and say what my trip is, let me give you an example of the one that I already booked. So this is where I'm going to be staying in Yorkville when I'm down in that same time, but I'm actually bringing a friend with me for that one. So again, this particular suite is check-in at 3, check-out at 11. Now, the interesting thing is that there's going to be a lot more instructions that are sent to you by email, and they're not necessarily on this space. So keep an eye on your email, double check your junk mail folders, because there's going to be other instructions will be showing up here and just beforehand. And I think that if you want to hear all the ins and outs about the rest of what it's like to actually stay in an Airbnb space and all the different options that are available to you, make sure you listen to the entire podcast episode that will be available October 28th, both on any of the podcast players if you want to hear the audio only version, or if you want to watch the entire YouTube show that will also include the link back to this if you needed to. You can also do so at the YouTube channel for Flying for Flavor. What do you think about us podcasters doing this whole video thing? If you like what you see and you still have wine in your glass, there's more videos down below that you can always keep up. Or subscribe and you'll never miss another one.